My girlfriend of 10 years cheated on me, had affairs with 2 guys, got pregnant, and had an abortion. Now she wants to talk, but I'm avoiding her. What should I do? I never thought my life would turn out like this. For 10 years, I was in a relationship with my high school sweetheart. She wasn't just my girlfriend, she was my world. We grew up together, shared dreams, and I truly loved her with everything I had. But recently, everything came crashing down. I found out she'd been cheating on me, not with just one guy, but with 2. She was physically involved with both of them, as if that wasn't devastating enough. She got pregnant by one of them and secretly had an abortion. The betrayal cuts so deep because I never doubted her. I trusted her completely, and all the while, she was lying to me. She even took money from me to support herself. While carrying on these affairs, it's humiliating to realize how blind I was. I feel shattered, like the person I loved never really existed. Since finding out, I've been avoiding her. I can't bring myself to face her, to hear her excuses, or to even process what's happened. I feel numb, like I'm just existing and not really living. And now she's trying to reach out to me. She says she feels ashamed of what she's done and wants to talk, but I don't know if I can handle it. I feel so lost. Depressed doesn't even begin to describe it. I'm at my lowest point. Sometimes it feels like my entire life has been a lie, like I've wasted all these years on someone who never truly loved me. What do I do now? Should I give her the chance to explain, or would that only make things worse? How do I even begin to put myself back together? After this, right now, I can't see a way forward. Story 2, I'm 35 years old, and I have 4 kids with my husband, who's 30. Writing this isn't easy because every time I try, I end up overloading with details and have to start over. The bottom line is this: whenever my husband is responsible for birth control, we end up with another child. Let me explain. When we were using condoms, I got pregnant with our twins, who are now 6, for 2 years. After that, we had no pregnancies because I had an IUD. Then, after a car accident, I had to stop using the IUD and switch back to condoms. I got pregnant immediately. That baby is now 3. Soon after, I got pregnant again right away. Now we have a 2-year-old. For nearly a year and a half, I've been asking my husband to get a vasectomy. There's always some reason it doesn't happen. He rescheduled his appointment once, and then never followed through. Every time I bring it up, it feels like I'm starting from scratch. I can't use hormonal birth control because of medication conflicts, so this has been our only option. Earlier this year, I faced a traumatic pregnancy. It wasn't planned, and where we live, there was no choice about keeping it. I wasn't entirely against having another child someday, but the timing was terrible. Adding to the stress, my husband and even my parents acted as if the pregnancy didn't exist. I lost the baby at 19 weeks. It was devastating. My husband went to work while I was miscarrying at home, leaving me alone with all 4 kids. I couldn't even go to the hospital because I had no one to watch them. 4 days later, he took a day off for a stuffy nose. I still haven't recovered emotionally. Then, 2 nights ago, he woke me up wanting to be intimate. I asked him to use a condom, and he acted like it was an inconvenience because they were in the bathroom. I reminded him twice more, and he finally got one, but during the act, he said, "I just can't." And later, I realized he had removed it. I didn't react right away. I don't know why. I was tired, and I enjoyed being close to him despite everything. I even told him I loved him after I realized what had happened. Now I'm a wreck. I feel violated, but I still feel comforted by him. When I'm near him, it's like I'm watching myself from the outside, trapped in this cycle of anger, fear, and affection. I've been shaking with rage, crying uncontrollably, and terrified of being pregnant again. The last pregnancy nearly killed me, and I can't go through that again. I sent him a text saying we need to talk tonight. I'm dreading the conversation because he's so reasonable until it comes to accountability. But I know we have to address this. If this conversation doesn't go well, I don't think our relationship will survive. I don't trust him anymore, and I can't imagine repairing this relationship. Unless he gets a vasectomy, anything less just won't be enough. I feel like I'm losing my mind, but I need to know, am I crazy for feeling this way? Am I wrong for refusing to be intimate with him until he gets fixed? I don't know what else to do. Story 3, it started out as a harmless joke, or at least that's what I thought. My husband has a work wife, a coworker he's close to. They have lunch together often, tease each other, and even talk about personal things. She occasionally brings him homemade lunches, and he's given her leftover desserts I've made. At first, it didn't bother me, but over time, it started to feel like she has a connection with him that I don't. Then she took it to another level. She work proposed to him, saying they needed to make their work relationship work official. It was all meant to be playful. Of course, she joked that he wasn't a real work husband. Without an actual work wedding, he thought it was hilarious, and their manager even approved the idea, saying it was a fun excuse to throw a party, using the office's pizza party funds. Now, this isn't just a casual pizza gathering. My husband's company is known for extravagant celebrations when they ship a product or land a big client. These parties can cost thousands, with food, drinks, and entertainment. But the idea of throwing a wedding for this work relationship feels like too much. My husband doesn't see it that way. He planned to wear his normal work clothes. But I've heard rumors that she's going to wear her actual wedding dress from her failed marriage. She's been divorced for 5 years. I told him I think this whole thing is ridiculous. I've tried to explain how uncomfortable it makes me, but he brushes me off, saying it's all just a joke. Still, I can't shake how serious it feels to me. I'm even considering showing up at the wedding to voice my concerns during the if anyone has objections part of the ceremony. His coworkers know me. I've been to the Christmas party and even stopped by the office once to bring him a clean pair of pants when he had a mishap. I'm sure they'd let me in. It's happening in the middle of the workday, so I'd have to take time off, but if stopping their work marriage means saving my actual marriage, it feels worth it. What should I do? Am I overreacting, or is this crossing a line? Story 4. 3 weeks ago, I went on a much anticipated vacation to South Korea with friends. My husband, a 40-year-old man, opted to stay home, claiming he'd be fine holding down the fort and watching our dog. I trusted him, assuming that as a grown adult he could manage basic survival like feeding himself while I was gone. I was wrong, so very wrong. Apparently, the first thing he did after I left was break our stove. How? By attempting to cook an entire 15-pound bag of red lentils all at once. Instead of transferring the cooked lentils into a bowl like a normal person, he ate them straight from the pot. Then he crammed the whole pot into the fridge, breaking one of the fridge shelves in the process. With the stove out of commission, he decided his best solution was to order Taco Bell via DoorDash, not just once or twice, but for the entire remainder of my trip. Meanwhile, he was getting high on medical marijuana, making increasingly questionable food choices. At some point, he bought a bunch of honeycombs from a friend's dad and decided snacking on beeswax. And honey was a great idea. Now, if you're doing the math here, lentils, Taco Bell, and honeycombs are essentially the holy trinity of gastrointestinal chaos. And this brings us to today. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. to the unmistakable sound of a motorcycle revving, except it wasn't a motorcycle. It was my husband. The stench that followed was biblical. As I scrambled to open every window in the house, he shuffled to the bathroom, leaving a trail of disaster in his wake. For the next 10 minutes, he didn't even have a solid bowel movement, just endless, horrifying gas. I'm talking 20 seconds of nonstop farts, a dramatic gasp for air, and then another 20 seconds of relentless, hellish noises. Even our dog, who usually loves him unconditionally, cowered under the couch, clearly questioning its life choices. Meanwhile, the windows were no help. The crisp 62-degree wind merely redistributed the ungodly smell throughout the house. By the time he emerged from the bathroom, sounding like a small engine revving, I'd had enough. I grabbed my keys, declared I was going to the diner, and took the dog with me. The dog didn't need convincing. It followed me out like we were escaping a war zone. Now, here I am, sitting in a diner with the dog under the table. For lack of a leash, I used a gag gift from my friends. A pink leash kid harness labeled with my name and emotional support human. The waitress gave me a weird look, but I'm beyond explaining anything. This is how my morning began. I sincerely hope yours smells better than mine. Story 5. I just came across a post about Father's Day, and it reminded me of something I've held close to my heart for years. When our daughter was born, my husband went above and beyond. I had a C-section and recovery wasn't easy. She came into our lives just a month before Father's Day, and while I wished we could celebrate that day properly, I was still healing and couldn't do much at all. During that time, my husband carried the weight of everything. I could barely do more than feed and change our baby or shuffle to the bathroom. He handled everything else, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the baby, and still found ways to give me breaks. He was tireless, even when I could see it wearing on him. He never complained, always smiling and telling me he was fine. Father's Day rolled around, and I desperately wanted to make it special for him. But every time our daughter fussed or cried, he'd tell me to stay put and take care of it himself. I felt so guilty watching him spend his first Father's Day doing all the work while I sat there, unable to do much. That night, after our daughter was finally asleep, I apologized to him. I was overwhelmed with guilt, and I couldn't hold back the tears. I told him how sorry I was, that I couldn't do more for him. He pulled me into a hug and said something I'll never forget. "Honey, you don't have to be sorry. You're still recovering, and you need all the rest you can get. I love you so much, and your health matters more than a day." Even after I recovered, and he went back to work, he stayed just as amazing. He'd take over with our daughter the moment he got home so I could rest. And at night, when I started taking over for feeding so he could sleep for work, he still somehow managed to support me in every way. Now, 5 years later, he's still an incredible dad. Our daughter adores him. She's a daddy's girl, through and through, and it's the most heartwarming thing to watch. He loves her with everything he has, and their bond melts my heart every day. I see posts sometimes about couples drifting apart after having kids or struggling during those tough early years, and it always makes me think about how grateful I am. My husband and I have been together for 13 years now, and we're still madly in love. I know I'm so lucky to have a partner who's as devoted, kind, and selfless as he is. Father's Day may not have been perfect that year, but he made it clear what kind of father and husband he was going to be. And for that, I'll always be thankful. Story 6, it's been 2 months since my last post, and honestly, I didn't expect to be writing an update, but here we are. First, let me start by thanking everyone for their kind words and reactions. However, I do need to address something many of you suggested thanking my husband with sexual favors. Guys, we're newlyweds. What do you think newlyweds spend a lot of their time doing? Trust me, all your suggestions have been covered, except the threesome idea. That's a definite no. Let me just say, sex isn't a reward for us. It's part of the deep connection we share. As for how I've been showing my appreciation, I've planned something special for his birthday. We're heading to Las Vegas for the weekend, and I've already made reservations at Gordon Ramsay's Hell's Kitchen. He knows I've planned something, but has no idea what's in store. Now for the real update. We've made a major decision. We're going no contact with his mother and low contact with his father. On top of that, Sharon, my sister-in-law, has moved out and is staying with a friend about 20 minutes away from us. So what happened? For weeks after our wedding, Pamela, my mother-in-law, was cordial. She wasn't overly nice, but at least she wasn't mean. That all changed 3 weeks ago. We were invited to a family get-together, and everyone was asked to bring something. I decided to make something special. A rum cake my college roommate from South America had taught me to bake. It's called viado, though I might be spelling that wrong. It takes hours to make, and my husband, Bucky, spent that time in the kitchen with me. He poured me wine, talked with me, and taste tested the rum. He saw firsthand how much effort I put into making that cake. At the gathering, things were going fine until Bucky mentioned he'd been offered a job that would require us to move out of state. We hadn't made a decision yet because we were still figuring out what it would mean for my job. Could I transfer, work remotely, or would I need to find something new? When Pamela heard about the job, she completely lost it. She threw a full-blown tantrum, accusing me of trying to steal her baby boy away from her. She screamed at me, and I was too stunned to respond. Bucky tried to calm her down, but she wasn't having it. And then she did the unthinkable. She marched over to the table, grabbed my cake, the one I'd spent hours perfecting, and threw it on the ground. I froze. All I could do was drop to my knees, staring at the mess and whispering, "It's just a cake." It's just a cake, but it wasn't just a cake. It was all the effort I'd put in, calling my old roommate for the recipe, hunting down specialty rum from a tiny shop, spending hours in the kitchen, all reduced to crumbs on the floor. I could hear my husband yelling, angrier than I'd ever heard him. I couldn't make out the words, but his voice was shaking with fury. After a while, he came over, helped me up, and we left. On the drive home, he kept reassuring me, saying it would be okay and that we were never going back there again. Once we were home and had calmed down, we talked about it. I didn't even have to bring up going no contact. Bucky had already made the decision. He told me he'd informed his mother that we were cutting contact and that the only way we'd reconsider is if I changed my mind. Together, we blocked Pamela on our phones. Then Bucky called his father, put him on speaker, and told him directly, "Pamela is not welcome in our home, and we are going no contact. This means we won't attend any family gatherings if she's present." Pamela tried to interject, but Bucky didn't even let her finish. He hung up. We haven't fully decided whether to accept the job offer yet, but now we have one more reason to leave. And honestly, I love my husband, even more because of this. His unwavering support, his defense of me, and his strength in setting boundaries with his family have only deepened my love and respect for him. Story 7. Askreddit. When I married my husband, I never imagined I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am trying to figure out what to do after a conversation that left me shaken to my core. It all started today when my husband, who is 34, got a glimpse of me with my shirt off. I was bloated, changing into another shirt, and caught him looking at me with a disgusted expression. It was a look I'd never seen before, and it stunned me. Confused, I asked him, "What? Why are you looking at me like that?" His response shocked me. He asked, "Have you gained weight? How much do you weigh?" I told him I was around 130 pounds that day thanks to bloating. His reply, "You're lying. There's no way you gained that much weight in just a couple of days." I didn't even know how to respond. He continued, clearly irritated, and finally said something that cut me to my core. "I don't find your stomach attractive at all. It's repulsive. You remind me of when I was 14, fat and chubby. When I asked God for a wife, I expected her to have the same desires and body shape as me, skinny and slender." I was stunned. I'm 25, 4'11", and weighed 114 pounds when we met. After having our baby almost 2 years ago, I now weigh 128 pounds, just 14 pounds more. I still breastfeed, and I'm trying to wean my little one off, which has made weight loss slower. But his words didn't just hurt, they revealed something deeper. He explained that while he knew my body wouldn't be exactly the same after having a child, he expected me to lose more weight. I pressed him further, trying to understand where this was coming from, and he revealed the root of his discomfort. His mom and sister were both overweight. His mom was over 400 pounds, and his sister is 250 pounds. He admitted he finds even the slightest amount of fat unattractive and carries deep-seated trauma from growing up in that environment. I tried to remain calm and asked him questions to get to the bottom of his feelings. At one point I asked, "Would you cheat on me or divorce me if I stayed this exact same weight?" His response, "I'll always be tempted by other women who have that physique, but I'd never cheat on you. I care too much about my relationship with the Lord, but I'll always desire more." That hurt even more. He continued, saying he had scripture to back up his preferences and that I should submit to his requests for me to lose weight. I couldn't help but laugh, even as I felt tears welling up because, as a believer myself, I know there's no scripture that supports this. The conversation only escalated from there. He became more hostile and upset, while I stayed surprisingly calm. Finally, I ended the discussion by telling him, "I would love you fat or skinny because I didn't marry you for what I could get, but for who you are or who I thought you were." Now, I'm left trying to process everything. His words, his behavior, and his expectations have shaken me deeply. I'm not angry, just hurt, confused, and unsure of what to do. What do you think? How should I handle this?